we're going to start with e4, e5. The reason for this is that I guess it's like what you see most often, especially when you're learning chess. I used to teach chess in schools for years upon years. I was a great babysitter in school classes, mainly. This is what you see. It's just the most common, it seems, starting point, a good starting point. And what we're going to look at in this video is after our moves, knight to f3, we're concentrating again the main move, knight to c6. And we're going bishop c4, which has a number of advantages. And the main advantage is no Berlin. We don't have to deal with any of that stuff, which is nice. The Berlin can only occur after the bishop comes to b5. And it's also aggressive. It attacks f7. Simple. And the way we're going to play it, it's going to be super aggressive because we're not going for any of that Goko piano maneuvering, you know, d3, c3, castles, knight d2, knight f1, knight g3, a4, b4, bishop g5, blah, blah, blah. No. We're not going for any of that. We are going to create havoc on the board in the main lines by playing a very quick d4. So that's our main intention, as we've seen in the model games. But this video, what we're covering, before we go on to Black's two main options, which are knight f6, where we go d4 immediately, and we're covering this one a bit later on. The Max Lang, we'll call this one. And the other main option, bishop c5, where we're going to castle and then play d4. These are the two main moves that you're going to face most often, because they're the most commonly played moves from Black. Develop the knight, develop the bishop. Need to do that to castle. But before we do that, there are other options. And we're going to just go over those sidelines first before we get to the main stuff. I'm never sure which way to do it. Do we go main line first, or do we build up to the main line? Anyway, you can choose which order you watch things in, right? And the moves we're going to look at include d6, which I suppose we could call our main line, our main possibility that we're going to look at in this video. We're also going to look at bishop to e7, the Hungarian defense. So this is a move that sometimes seen. And finally, we're going to cover f5, which is the load of rubbish, do not play as Black defense. And another benefit of putting the bishop on c4 is that f5 is just really loose. I mean, had we played our bishop to b5, then this Latvian gambit is totally legitimate for Black. I know Seth Rahman's done a very interesting course on Chessable on this f5 move. I wish I had time to watch some of these Chessable courses. I just don't. One day I will. Too much time preparing all these things, which is great fun as well. But I really do want to look at this. But again, one of the advantages of going bishop c4, and let's start with this move, is that f5 just doesn't really work, because the bishop on c4 is so much more aggressively placed on this open diagonal, and Black is just opening that diagonal even more by playing f5. Now, the simple solution to this move is d4. And again, this move is our common push, right? Remember this d4 move. We combine bishop and c4 and d4 in most of our variations to open things up and attack. And this is just an excellent version of the Latvian. Now, e takes d4 is, well, the best try. F takes e4 allows us to go knight takes e5. And this is really just quite bad for Black already. I mean, there's threats of queen h5. The Black king is quite weak. And let's just have a look. d5 has to be played because obviously knight f7 is the other threat. You can't really take here. This is just ugly as, you know, where are you going to develop these pieces? We're castling. We've got queen d. Ugh. So you have to play d5. And now just simply bishop b5. And Black can't really deal with all the threats here, because there's threats to c6 and there's threat on h5. So already Black is just, you know, lost pretty much. So we're going to go back, and after f5, d4, black, if he wants to play in this rubbish way, which I'm not sure why he would, he has to take on d4. And there's a number of moves here. Now, knight g5 is kind of tempting, but let's keep it kind of simple. And I like the move e5. This is quite like a line in the reverse King's Gambit that black often plays, but it's a zooped up line. This really puts the pawn in the middle of the position, making black's options very hard. We take away the f6 square. We have times to win this back. And this is just an annoying blooming pawn. We're castling quickly, getting a rook to e1. And black's played this horrible f5 move, so he can't castle because he's moved that pawn. You know, if you put the pawn back on f7, black is okay, but in this position, not so. So, for example, bishop c5 is as good a move as any. If black tries d6 or d5, I mean, maybe d5 is more logical. It doesn't matter. We take on pass on, and after bishop takes d6, castles. And again, if that pawn can move back, it's okay. I remember the great Soviet player Yusupov, who's around still. So when I say the great, he's still here with us, and he's one of the best teachers of chess, great player. He said the problem with f5 and move 1, the Dutch, by the way, I don't agree with this, is that often in the middle game, the best move that black has is f5 to f7. Now, certainly, if black can go f5 to f7, he'd want to play that here, but he can't. And after something like knight f6, can't suggest anything else. We just go check. Very easy moves to play. King has to move. And now, of course, this is not to be captured because of bishop h2 check. But I like the move to keep accelerating our development, c3. It has to really be taken because if we win our pawn back, it's not great. By the way, knight g5 is interesting, but you have to watch out for some ideas, again, of knight g4. We don't want to allow black to have any fun. So just c3 I really like. So it has to be taken. And after knight c3, fantastic compensation. We're actually going to put our bishop on g5, I feel. So we get all of our pieces developed. And we're going to continue with bishop g5 and then knight into d5. Pressure, pressure, pressure. And this is just a really horrible position for black to play. How's he going to get this bishop out? The king is always exposed. We have very nice natural moves. Bishop, knight, can even move the queen, get a rook to d1. Everything is having fun. So going back to bishop c4, well, f5 is just not a move that black can play. So that's one of the worst options. Now, like I say, in this chapter, we're really just covering f5 and bishop e7. And, of course, the main line, d6. The main line for this chapter, d6. So let's go to bishop e7, the so-called Hungarian defense. And again, these moves are quite rare, right? Because most of the time, in 90% of the time, you're going to face knight f6 or bishop e7. And here, I think to keep it fun, remember the idea of this course is gambit when we can, attack at all cost. Well, not at all cost. I mean, maybe I'll rephrase that. Gambit when we can, if it's sound. If not, attack in the most aggressive possible blooming way that we can. Kitchen sink coming at ya. And here, well, we could castle, but let's stick with our main idea, d4. And again, this fits so well into our simple plan. Bishop c4 and then d4, either immediately or in some variations after the bishop comes to c5, castles first. And we want to blast the center open. Now, this has to really be taken here. Black hasn't got any other option. He hasn't got a good way to maintain that pawn. And there's absolutely nothing wrong here with knight takes d4. If you want to play, I mean, I would be tempted to play this if I wanted a safe advantage. After something like knight f6, knight c3, we've got a nice bit of, it's a bit like a Scotch here, but we've got a nice space advantage. And black has committed his bishop to this square, and the Scotch wants to put it here. So this is, I mean, I don't have a lot of faith in the Hungarian defence. And this is a simple way to play. But we're going to go for c3. And this is much more fun and tricky. This is a bit like an Evans gambit in some ways. In the Evans gambit, you go b4, c3, and you want to get your queen to b3 and attack. And this is very dangerous. So there's a number of moves here, and d takes c3 is a move that black often plays because he doesn't really know what to do. So we'll come to the main move. I think we're going to do main lines in this one later on. But let's have a look at the other options. Well, d3 can simply be met by queen takes d3. And after d6, castles, we have very simple development. And our idea here is just to get the bishop to f4, knight to d2, space advantage, rooks in the middle. So knight f6, bishop f4. I like the f4 square because if bishop g5, at some point we might have to swap our bishop for that bishop. I don't think I want to do that because the Hungarian bishop on e7 is a very passive bishop. So this one makes a lot more sense. It also controls e5, which is a square that black might want to get a piece to. And at some point, we might play e5 ourselves. After black castles, let's get our last piece into the game, knight d2. And we're going to go rook d1. And another nice idea here is bishop b3, even to c2, getting ready on this diagonal. We can put our knight on d4. And the last idea I would like to mention, just if you ever get to this slightly better middle game position, is to use your f-pawn. So bishop g3 and f4. Obviously, we get our knight to d4 on this line. This is another. So there's lots of little ways to play. If I was white here, I mean, because black's not really, black is cramped and he doesn't have anything to do, is one move we want to keep an eye on is d5, right? We don't want to allow him to play that, but that's really hard for him to play. But if I was white here, I would start with rook d1 because I'm just making sure I'm covering that one. I think I'd play bishop to b3 because, you know, it gets out of the way in knight a5s and I can come back to c2. And then I'd start doing these ideas with f4 and attack like that. So d3 from black is slightly better for us, no worry at all. Now d6 is not really getting the point of our play. The point of our play is not to simply take back here, which would be a nice, easy way to get us an advantage. But the real point is queen b3, because we're going for check and then checkmate. And there's no way that black can defend f7. So he should try knight a5, but now we take here and play queen a4. And this is an idea you see in the Evans gambit, funnily enough. And after we get our piece back by taking here, well, we are not even a pawn down, but look at black's king. Black's king is horrendously placed. Big advantage to white. So that's another move that we don't have to worry about. d6 is not getting the point because of queen b3. Now, knight to f6 is a move which, again, is another mistake. And this is another problem with the Hungarian defense. We're going to see the concept, another problem with the Hungarian defense. We're going to see the concept of playing e5 in the Max Lang chapter. This is one of our main moves. And in these positions, the general rule for black when we play e5 is that black wants to play d5, right? If he can't play d5, black's in trouble. And in the Hungarian defense, he can't play d5 because when we take on f6, we're attacking the bishop. If the bishop was on f8, as we'll see later on, or c5, then he can do this because he can take here, but this just loses a piece now. So knight f6, e5, he's got to move the knight again. And this is not what he wants. For example, he moves the knight here. Let's just win the whole center. And we've got h3 coming next. Black's in serious trouble. If the knight tries to trip it, you know, go a little bit trippy and come into e4, then, well, we'll just go bishop d5 and be like, yeah, okay. That didn't work, did it? He has to go f5, and now we got that same problem we saw before for black, this diagonal. We just take on d4. It's nice. So c3, the only other option taking here, and the best option I would consider for black, is knight to a5. And this is actually a very rare choice. We're not, another thing we've been very, and this is, again, major thanks to Richard Palliser, who's done a lot of the behind-the-scenes work on the files here, is that we're not always just, this is a rare choice. And we're not just leaving the red choices hoping that no one sees them. If we think the red choices are good for either colour and some of the best options, we want to keep them. We want to make sure that people are notified to them. And in actual fact, knight a5, this rare choice, it is one of black's better options because we've seen how strong this bishop is. Let's at least get that bishop away. But also the knight's misplaced here. And I would say we just go back to e2. This bishop has potential later on. For example, when we attack that knight, it might come back here. And now after knight takes, this is still a lot of compensation for us. We have this lovely knight d4, knight f6. What does it get hit by? You should know this by now. It gets hit by e5, as we see in numerous lines. And, well, let's have a look at some. Knight f6, e5, we don't need to look at that. Let's have a look at probably the best choice, d6. Well, let's just develop castles. And now, if knight to f6 here, we can now start doing queen a4 check. Knight comes back. And what move would you play now? You want to use the initiative because black's going to castle. And we're doing this. We developed, we castled. Let's open things up. And this move, e5, it is a very good way. This is really one of the main points behind white's whole play. When we've got our king castle to break with e5. Now, if knight moves back to d7, we can take here, and we have a very strong initiative here. For example, bishop takes, bishop g5 comes in, completing our development with tempo. And this is likely stronger than knight d5, which has been played previously. Let's have a look at some options here. Well, bishop e7 is very unwise because we can take here. And if queen takes, we have knight d5. This bishop cannot be captured because of rook e1. If knight takes e7 here, then the queen is in trouble on d8. Look at black's pieces. They're really tied down. And we can even, I mean, black is probably just losing here. If he tries to castle, we even just win material very simply. Knight e5, and after c6, bishop g4, taking advantage of the pin, and black's losing. So I want to just run through that one more time. This knight a5 rare move. Let's just have a look at this. There's a couple of other lines we need to look at. Bishop e2, takes. And now d6, and d6 is played first of all so that black can develop the knight to f6, but we're always trying to play e5. Let's castle first. And now we'll have a look at knight c6 in a jiffy. But let's have a look at knight f6 first, very natural. Well, now we want to play e5, but we don't want to allow exchange of queens, so we flick in a check, play e5. We'll come to pawn takes e5 in a minute. If the knight goes back, black's really discombobulated. Love it. Always get that word in every course I do. We take on d6, and if bishop takes, we just develop. Bishop g5, bishop e7 is horrible. Now knight c5, trying to counterattack, allows queen h4, and this is something we see in the hillbilly. Our queen coming to a very good square, and after something like queen d7, I mean f6 here, we just drop back to e3, and if now, what does black do? Black has to try castling, but this even blunders a piece to queen c4 check. And this is all very unpleasant. So queen d7 is a better trying to keep the pawn there to avoid any mishaps. But now I like this aggressive b4. Again, black is discombobulated. And this move, let's remember, defended by there, so the knight has to try and centralize, and now we just put our rook on d1. This is all new stuff. This hasn't been played theoretically, but of course we've analyzed this with the strongest computer programs we can find. And this could do with a test, but I would much rather be white in this position. Black's king just seems to be very vulnerable. And we have ways to increase your initiative. Knight e4. Increase your initiative like that. Maybe we can even sack on f6 here. If black castles, if he doesn't castle, let's say he takes here, well, he's got still these same problems. He can't castle here, and this knight is coming here after h6. I mean, this just seems like a really nice initiative for white to have. Normal moves, attack. So I'm going to go back, and the last thing to try that black can try is f6. And this does look a little bit ugly, right? Because we saw how the a2, g8 diagonal haunts black in a number of these lines. And now just e3 is a good square. And after castles, knight e4. And again, this is a position where black can play this. It's not winning for white, but white's activity is certainly enough compensation for a pawn. I mean, always the move that black wants to play is this one, but as we've seen, this loses a piece. It's actually controlled by these two here, but he can't play this move at any moment. And we've got some fine squares for our rook. Rook d1. I wouldn't be surprised if we win a pawn when we take on d6, and ongoing pressure on this diagonal. So full compensation. So let's just go through this again. This is this knight a5 move, which is quite rare, but maybe one of black's better options if he's going to play in this way. And now after this, so we check, we go here, e5. The only other thing that black can try is to take on e5. When knight takes e5 is simple, and I think this is one of black's better ways to play, because the other lines in practice, I mean, let's talk practically. If we're playing against a computer, maybe black can hold on in those other lines. But when we're playing against a human, imagine a human suddenly faced by this as black. He doesn't want to defend those positions for the rest of the game, where he has to play accurately every move. And I think a very human way to play would be castles. Return the pawn, have the pawn back. But after knight takes c6, b takes c6, we don't have to be in a rush to capture here. And a nice simple way to go is bishop f3, because our bishop's going to be much better on that square c6 than our queen. Our queen might get attacked by the bishop, but when we take there, we have a better pawn structure, ongoing advantage. The black queen still doesn't have a good square when we get a rook to d1, and this is a safe, steady edge. The last thing to look at in this knight a5 line, bishop e2. So the bishop, I mean, you can see that the bishop's better on e2 than any other square. And the reason for that is we don't want to block in this file. The bishop is not as actively as it likes to be, but also the black knight is badly placed. So it's just a trade-off. And the last line we need to look at here, in this particular line with knight coming to the rim, is d6, castles, and now knight c6 immediately. So trying to get that knight back into play. And also just trying to stop us from playing this e5 move. And in this situation, I think we play queen a4 anyway, because this gives us those opportunities to transpose into what we know. And it's an important pin, this one. One of the advantages of not having the c2 pawn is the queen can come quickly out to one of these diagonals. Bishop d7 is the only unique try. We saw what happened after knight e5. And now the crafty move, queen b3. And our main idea is certainly not to grab there, but as we've seen, it's bishop c4. And like the Evans gambit, we see the power of these pieces on that diagonal. So black really has to play knight f6, otherwise we'll get that move in. We can't really go for this now because black's going to castle. And if we do this kind of thing now, then black has adequate defenses with something here. So in this situation, and this is the time we should get our pawn back. Rook b8, and our queen comes back into play. Black has to castle. Let's centralize. And this is slightly better for white again. This is the kind of structure that you often actually get in the e4 Italian lines when black plays the sideline. Black often has to give up his center And because the bishop's on e7, he doesn't have enough compensation. In some of the more theoretical lines, main lines, which are not always covered in this course because we're going d4 gambiting, black would have a bishop on like c5 in these lines, which gives him that extra sort of activity. The bishop on e7, it's a passive position. And where are we gonna put this bishop? Well, in this case, I feel the safest and most aggressive square is actually b2. So our plan here would be b3, bishop b2, and that bishop is much more dominating than black's bishop. And then, like we always see, let's put our rook on the d file. I like this file for the rook because we might want to break with e5. We control that file. So very simple plan, b3, bishop b2. Even this rook can come to the d line, the other rook to the c line. And then at some point, we're going to try our e5 break. Or if we have the bishop on b2, you might consider moving the knight here so the bishop can be released against g7. These are the kind of standard ideas that you want to get going here. So the last, let's make sure I get all the lines in here. So this Hungarian variation, bishop e7, d4, nice move, takes c3, nice move. And the last line, what happens if black takes on c3? Well, now queen b3. Now queen d5 is a move that looks a little bit tempting as well. But funnily enough, black is still afloat, bizarrely, after this. Bishop takes here, and now castles. And when I first saw this, I was like, well, pieced up, aren't we? How can it be afloat here? And you suddenly realise, well, actually, he's threatening the bishop, he's threatening b2, and he's got knight b4 ideas. And it's like, oh yeah. So rather than allowing black to do that, which might be his one idea behind this variation, let's just go queen b3. This is a better way of doing it. And black's struggling again. This queen b3, Evans Stiley. I mean, knight a5, bishop f7, we've seen when we can go queen b5, grab that knight, and we're just doing very well. And black has to play a move now like king f8, because now this knight at h6 just doesn't work. We take it. Castling has not the same effect because we can move the bishop. Our queen controls b2. So king f8, what a horrible move to play, right? And now let's take that one anyway. And we get this knight a5 line. Of course, knight a5 has to be played. This diagonal is too strong. And we've seen this thing where, well, I said queen b5. Of course, taking on c3 is better. And in this position, we're not even material down. Just have a look at king safety. I take the white king. White king's much safer here. So after our starting moves, knight c6, bishop c4, the Hungarian variation is not worrying, because against the Hungarian, we're going to stick with one of our main philosophies with bishop on c4. Let's play d4 when we can play it, as quickly as we can play it. We open lines and it's aggressive. And after black takes, we go c3. That is key. So the last thing we're going to look at is d6. What do we do here? In this case, I'm going to suggest we castle first. And again, these are the only real things you have to consider throughout this course. And this is why it's worth maybe going over the movable stuff a little bit. Well, a little bit, a lot of it. Is a lot of bit a phrase? When do you play d4 and when do you castle first? And it sometimes changes. And I just think castling is a good move here. We're going to go d4 anyway, so why not just tuck it away? And this also gives black another chance to go wrong. And the reason I don't want to force things with d4 immediately is if you can give your opponent a chance to go wrong with knight to f6, which is a normal developing move, let's give him that chance. And after knight g5, well, now we're practically we're winning. He has to go d5, which is a bad fried liver. I'm sure we all know the fried liver. And the fried liver, the king's on e1. And a bad fried liver for black is really bad. And after we take on d5, we have the classic knight f7, queen f3, king e6, knight c3. This knight under a lot of pressure. And here, d4. And we have far too... This is a main line with a king on e1, which is considered very good for white anyway. or at least very dangerous to black. With the king on g1, black is busted. We don't care about the piece. There's a king on bloody e6. Something like c6. Let's go there. And the king tries to run away. Standard moves. Remember, we're playing like Morphy. What does Morphy do? Morphy attacks, tries to capitalize on his developed pieces. If his developed pieces can't do a decisive attack, I was going to say a capitalism attack. What's that? Hitting the stock market, maybe. Like, it's been going on. I don't know when this course comes out, what's been going on in the stock market then, but it's interesting times. I don't know if interesting is even the right word. But if you can't capitalize on your active pieces, then bring in your reinforcements. And bishop g5 is just the way to do that. King c7, and now we can take, and here e6 is decisively opening up this diagonal. Very unlikely you'll get this, of course. So that's why we're castling. We're giving black the chance, which sometimes happens, you know, lower level of going this error. He's now got to go bishop e7. And now after d4, we get this Hungarian defense. And now, obviously, it's transposed to the line where black plays d6. So you can get this position after bishop e7, d4, d6, and here castling from the Hungarian. If you remember in the Hungarian, we really only looked at pawn takes pawn here. But, of course, this is another move order in this position after d6, castling, where we get to this free d6, castling, bishop e7 has to be played, d4. And now it's actually a little bit difficult for black. And in this position, black is very, you know, takes here because this pawn is now very annoying. It's threatening to do things. And after takes here, well, maybe the more adventurous of you want to play c3 again. But in this case, black has better development. And after c3, knight f6, we don't have e5. So here we've probably got to go knight takes d4 and go for that small advantage. Knight f6, knight c3. It's a pleasant edge. Let's look at it a little bit more. Castles, what do we do now? Well, black's very cramped. The bishop can't get into the game. Black can't play d5 in this position because it's under control. We have that space advantage. There's a number of ways to play. And I think the best way to play this, we've got to think of this bishop. And generally here, either f4 or in some cases g5. Now, I know I said before g5 is not always ideal. But what I would do first, I would play rook e1 because I just want to keep things as defended as I can and control the center, make sure everything in the middle is okay. And here, black is really struggling to have a plan. And the main move that black has tried, and we're following Novara Najlicka from the Prague Blitz 2018, is knight takes d4. Otherwise, I don't really know what black can do here. It's like, have a think, what moves can black play in this position? It's not easy. So knight takes d4, queen takes a6. And this is black's only try. And it's very important in any chess game to look at your opponent's last move, which in this case is a6, and think, well, why are they trying to do that? And as long as you think like that in chess and stop their plans, if they're plans which are quite annoying, and this is quite annoying, this plan, whilst when you get a chance pushing your own plans, you're going to win, basically. And here, well, let's just play a4. We're stopping any of that stuff. And after rook e8, now we've got a decision where you put the bishop. And I think bishop f4 is perfectly okay. But bishop g5 was played in this game. And after this bishop here, knight d7, Novara decided to swap off here because his main idea was to not play the longer idea of this one, but to play f4 straight away. And white is starting to advance, starting to push the space advantage. There's no need to rush with knight d5. We're probably going to go rook d1, everything developed, push that knight away, and then we can either go e5 or even f5 and just keep coming forwards. So really these sidelines, they're quite easy after knight c6, bishop c4. There's nothing too taxing there. And we can just go over them very briefly. f5 is just a bad move. We immediately strike against this because obviously f5's creating an explosion immediately. It's not putting it on a timer. If it puts the explosion on a timer in good James Bond fashion, we might have time to get ourselves a nice martini or something. But with f5, we have to do something immediately. That's why we go d4. And as long as you do this and you're just careful, black's king is too weak. Just work out what to capture at the right time. Hungarian variation with bishop e7. Well, in this case, we don't need to castle here. d4 immediately is more testing, because after pawn takes d4, d6 transposes, we have this extra option of playing c3. And as we've seen, the reason we're doing d4 in this case is that extra tempo, because black hasn't got these guys out, can be very dangerous with queen b3 coming. And the final thing to remember is if d6, well, I would now play castling because it gives black the chance of blundering with knight to f6. He has to play bishop e7. And now, again, we just play d4. And in this case, after pawn takes, we're not sacrificing because he's got better control. We're just taking on d4, a nice small advantage, but a very, very easy advantage to have for the rest of the game. So all these lines, not worrying, easy for us to play. We're getting an edge, and black's on the back foot, so not to worry about. We're obviously going to come to more of the main lines shortly, depending what order I guess you watch these videos in.